Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 128. Jeanette Hall, Big Buck's Brain Tumors, and World-Class Taxidermy. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Bo Harris with Antler Eyes. You're listening to my favorite deer hunting podcast ever, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Craig Cushman at Hunter Specialties, and you're getting ready to hear another great podcast from the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Mark Hammer from Antler Action Products, and I shot the hammer buck, and you're listening to my favorite deer hunting podcast, the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. What's happening? Hoping you're having a great day. And Dusty, I know you're listening. I know you're on the other mic. Hope you're having a great day as well. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, man, I am having a great day, Jay, and it's just great to be alive, really.
It is a great day to be alive. I'm actually staring at a stink bug right now in my podcast studio as we record this. I hate those things. Anyway, we're going to go to Alberta, Canada today, Dusty, and speak to a lady by the name of Jeanette Hall, who is doing some world-class taxidermy, but she's also shooting big bucks, and she's going to tell us the story of the highway buck, one of those big Alberta monsters that kind of love living in the middle of nowhere up there where Jeanette is.
And it's a pleasure to go with a female hunter on any hunt, Jay. It's something that we don't do very often, and it really sparks my interest because more and more these female hunters are really getting involved in the action and actually harvesting some great animals and really dialing in on some great techniques in the whitetail woods.
Yeah, they're hard hunting folks. So there's anytime we find anybody that hunts hard, I don't care, male, female, doesn't matter. We want to speak to that person. Just in a quick reference to last week's show, Dusty, that we had with Bo Harris from Antler Ice, I got a listener question that was sent in by Lee Kellogg, and he had this question. He goes, "Hey guys, love the podcast. I enjoyed your recent interview with Antler Ice. As a scientist, I think they have a very valid point. However, I would have asked them how long after the doe and heat urine is collected is it frozen. From a study I remember, it needs to be frozen within 24 hours of collection to avoid degradation of the product. The urine degradation makes biological sense. Otherwise, bucks would be going crazy during the rut, not knowing which doe to track." So thanks, Lee, for your question. And here is the answer. I actually reached out to Bo this afternoon by text, and Bo says that it is frozen within 24 hours of collection. So hopefully that answers your question, Lee. And Dusty, why don't we go speak with Jeanette Hall?
Let's get Jeanette on, and we're going to learn a lot, so you don't want to miss this show.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about deer hunting and taxidermy. Jeanette Hall, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Excellent. So tell us where you're at right now.
I'm actually, if you really want to know where I'm at this exact second, I'm sitting outside my driveway. I've got a 250-yard driveway on my farm, and I have to drive actually out to get service. I've got a lot of spruce trees around the house, so you can't even see my house from the road. So they kind of mess up my cell service. So here I sit.
So you have to drive to a location to get service where you're at. So that kind of means you're out in the middle of nowhere.
I am. I'm way up north here in Alberta, and I'm about an hour and a half straight west of Edmonton.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's out in the middle of nowhere, but that's good because that's where the deer are.
You know what? Nowhere is one of my favorite places in the whole world, actually.
Same here.
The middle of nowhere is just the best place. Just go and chill out and get in tune with yourself and your mind and just relax. That's what I like.
Yeah, the best part about living here is I can actually hop on my quad and I can be in a hunting area within under 5 minutes.
That
sounds perfect.
That is just the quintessential best place on the planet. So you're in Canada.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked to anybody in Canada since we talked to Milo Hansen a while back. I'm sure you know who Milo is, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Miles. He was a good sport and entertained us and told the story again because he's told it a million times, but he opened up one more time for us. It was pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he's a really good guy.
Yes, yeah, we were big fans of Milo. So you're in Alberta now, but did you grow up there?
Actually, no. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis, Tennessee. All right. So how do you go from Memphis to Alberta?
Well, I actually I moved away from Tennessee in 2008, and I went as far as I could go, and I hit ocean, and decided, you know what, I'll stick out here for a little while, and that was in California.
Wow.
And that's actually where I got my education as a taxidermist. I was going to college to be a fish and wildlife officer, and luckily my zoology professor saw that I had artistic ability and said, you know what, I think you're going in the wrong direction. And he introduced me to a taxidermist friend of his. And, just looking around his studio, I said, you know what, I can do this. This is something I want to do. And that was 14 years ago.
No kidding. So how did you react to that? I mean, when they told you you're going in the wrong direction, did you think you had spent a lot of time going in the wrong direction for a while? And kind of, how did that make you feel? In other words, did you feel like you're off track and need to get back on, or how did that go?
Well, I trusted him. His name was Professor Kirkhart, and what an awesome individual. He really knew his stuff, and I trusted him. So he did. He pointed me in absolutely the right direction. I come to find out fish and wildlife wasn't really the direction I wanted to go in. I'm not much of a law enforcement type. I'm kind of short. I'm 5'4", and people would probably laugh at me if I tried to pull someone over. So yeah, I think I went in the right direction.
It's something, there's some fighting at 5'4" though. I'm not so sure about that. That's cool though. So,
yeah.
But you felt like you found your calling by getting to the artistic aspects of the outdoors, and but it didn't stop there. From what I understand, I mean, you're not just a taxidermist. You're hunting. You're still very much in the outdoors, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I am. I've pretty much got my hands in every single part of this industry that's humanly possible. I'm on a TV show here in Alberta that airs on Wild TV, and it's called No Limits TV. So it's it's a really popular TV show. I've been with them for about a year now.
Okay.
I'm also a pro staff for Anka hunting gear, and it's made out of Spain. It's incredible hunting clothes. They brought me on board and they said, here's some camo, try to kill it. And I did. I tried everything in my power to ruin this clothing, and I still don't have a rip in it. So
interesting.
Really, really enjoy pro staffing for them. And I also volunteer for Alberta Hunters Education Instructors Association, also known as AHIA. And each year I take out 3 to 5 women and children, and I take them on their very first hunting expeditions.
Oh, wow. That's quite a schedule you've got going on. So,
yeah, it was amazing. This year I helped one lady. Within 1 hour, I got her not only her first deer, first buck, and a doe. And that was incredible. She also ended up getting her first cow moose.
No kidding. All right. So,
yeah.
So what drew you to the outdoors in the first place? Were you exposed to it as a kid in Memphis, Tennessee, or is it just something that you got into later in life?
I was actually. My grandparents had a farm in Lebanon, Tennessee. And so I grew up there playing in the creek, going out, and I'd love going into the boneyard and picking up cow skulls and dragging those back to the house. But my grandfather got me going with a little .22, and he'd set up a target on an old oak tree, and he'd give me lessons on how to shoot and gun safety. And I kind of lost track of that in my teenage years once I got into, boys are kind of fun. So I lost track of that. And then when I got back into college, then my focus returned back to hunting. And with my introduction into taxidermy, I just blew up. That was all I could think about was hunting, and it really changed my life. I was spending anywhere from $700 a month on fast food. And
wow.
With hunting, that changed everything. And I ended up getting a brain tumor. And I honestly believe it was from all the fast food and garbage that I was eating.
Mm.
And I ended up curing my own brain tumor by growing my own food and hunting my own food. And I quit going to fast food restaurants. I quit eating out. I quit buying all meat from grocery stores. From then on, I just started eating everything that I took in hunting season.
There's something to be said about that kind of diet. I've been doing some of my
very powerful.
Absolutely,
very powerful.
I've been doing some of my own research on just like the ketogenic diets, and basically using fatty acids as your fuel cells for your mitochondria, which has some kind of a anti-cancer effect as well, because cancer cells need to thrive on glycogen and glucose, and without that they die. So if you can constantly stay in a state of ketogenic type blood zone, basically you're killing blood cells, but you're also using a fuel that's super fuel, and you don't even think about the glucose or the sugars or anything like that. All carbohydrates basically are gone, especially the fast food ones.
Yeah, honestly, you've got to get back to eating almost like a caveman.
Right.
You've got to go back to basics, quit eating the sugar and all that other garbage. And I became so much healthier once after a year passed and I was eating so much better. It really opened up my mind to saying, you know what, this hunting thing, it's not just about going out and killing an animal. It's about self-preservation as well, because if you're eating all this fast food and garbage that's being processed, you're in essence killing yourself. And so with hunting, it actually saved my life.
I believe that. I do. I think the diet changes a lot of things. So let's talk about the brain tumor a little bit. When were you diagnosed?
I was actually diagnosed in 2011, but I had been having a lot of problems prior to that. And it all really came to a head in 2011. I had just gotten back from Africa, and I was having tremendous problems. I lost all of my peripheral vision. I was going in and out of blindness in my left eye. And then probably the worst was I started lactating. And I thought, oh, my goodness, this isn't possible because I'm not pregnant. But my brain tumor was located on my pituitary gland, but it was also large enough that it was pressing on my optical nerves as well.
Gotcha. All right. So this was a big deal. And how did you beat it? What things did you do other than the diet? What happened after that?
I just kept really active, and the biggest thing was having a positive attitude, and I had to do things that made me happy. And so the things that make me happy are going hunting, even if it's just shed hunting. That's still getting me out there, getting me mobile, staying off the couch, and doing taxidermy. That makes me seriously happy too, and that also makes me lots of money. So, that's just how I kept going. And once I kept going, it just went from there. I got my vision back, and then within 3 years, all of my peripheral had come back. The headaches had stopped. I had horrible migraines, which I never had headaches before, and I was able to relieve all of that. They had put me on, 16 or 17 pills I was taking a day, and some of them were nasty. The Topamax was disgusting, and that one I believe is even banned in the U.S. But they put me on that, and that took a while to get off of. And once I got rid of all of the drugs that they had given me and just kept doing things that made me happy, kept active, eating wild game and food grown in my garden, voila.
Awesome. I'm glad. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm glad you kicked its butt and moved on, and that's good. You just kept on going. All right. So let's talk about going from Memphis to California. And before you ended up in Canada, what drew you to California?
Like I said, I went as far as I could and hit ocean. I was just on a trip to explore and really liked California. It's a very beautiful state. I fell in love with the wilderness up there with Yosemite. I was going to Yosemite probably 2 or 3 times a week and just really enjoyed the scenery. It's just beautiful, and had some friends that actually got me into hunting wild boars and bears. And loved it. We would go out with dogs and hunt bears, and that, I tell you, that's an absolute adrenaline rush. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it.
I haven't tried that, but that sounds very interesting. We can actually hunt bear with dogs where I live for certain parts, and I've never done it here, but I know people have. It's similar to hunting deer actually with dogs, and I'm not opposed to any of that stuff. It's but it's quite a rush, listening to the dogs and knowing that you've got something on the run.
Absolutely. Actually, 3 years ago today, I got my cougar. And of course, we use hounds to track the cougar. And wow, what an amazing, kind of a scary hunt at the same time. I've never had an animal that angry. So that was a huge adrenaline rush.
Yeah, I don't think it gets much more intense than that.
No.
All right. So California wasn't necessarily a destination. It was just a stopping point because you couldn't go any further without getting on a boat. Interesting. And that's where you landed in taxidermy school.
That's correct. I learned one-on-one from a master taxidermist in Clovis, California, and I studied with him for 3 years. And then I got a job offer in, of all places, Bismarck, North Dakota.
All right. So we're bouncing around the country here. So
yes.
Now we're going to Bismarck.
Now we go to Bismarck, and
right.
I took a fabulous job working for Dakota Taxidermy.
Neat.
And I got a huge education there. It's very high-end taxidermy, and that's where I really developed my skills. They have a great group of guys working there, and I got hooked into working with African game, which I didn't have that opportunity in California, and so that became my specialty, was working with African.
Oh, wow. All right. So you're getting deep into this hunting industry the further you go. And
yes.
All right. So how do we go from North Dakota to Alberta? Although we're pretty close at that point. I mean, we're not far.
Really close.
Yeah.
I was competing quite a bit at taxidermy shows, and I went to the World Show and competed there, and that's where I met a fellow by the name of Ken Walker, and he is a 4-time world champion taxidermist. And he says, you know what, Jeanette, I think I could even develop your skills a little bit further and put you right up at the top. And he did. I went and took several courses from him here in Alberta, and absolutely amazing. And that took my level right up there. After working with Ken, I ended up taking a 3rd in the world with a Cape Buffalo in 2009.
Holy smokes. I didn't even know there were competitions for taxidermy.
Yes, they're huge. They're held in just about every state, usually in the spring and summer, because obviously in the fall we're too busy to get away from the studio.
Right.
But yeah, they're huge. And then every 2 years they have the World Taxidermy Convention, and that's usually held in Springfield, Illinois.
Okay.
Or Springfield, Missouri. It kind of bounces around the country. So usually in that central location is where they have it. But absolutely incredible. You've got taxidermists coming from absolutely everywhere. Africa, Norway, all over Europe, a lot of Germans. But it's incredible to see the work that's put there, because you've got to really do something to even place in that show.
Let's talk about taxidermy for a little bit. I don't know a ton about it. I've brought things to a taxidermist, and I've seen some of the shows where they'll show demonstrations. But and I definitely see these mockeries of bad taxidermy online. I assume these are the amateurs that are just trying it for the first time. What types of things separate you from the average taxidermist, for example?
I spend a tremendous amount of time making sure that thing is show quality. If it's not show quality, it doesn't go out my door. So if I can't take this to the World Show and win at least a 3rd in the world in the Masters division, I will not let it go out of my studio doors.
Okay.
So I carve out the nostrils. I make a septum inside the nose. So basically, if you take a flashlight and you stick it up that deer's nose, you should be able to see just about to the thing's brain. I do nictitating membranes. The ears have all the inner detail, the ear canal. All of that's preserved. I use ear liners instead of, a lot of people just leave the cartilage in, which I find after a few years that tends to twist and break and whatnot. So I always use celastic ear liners in all of my mounts. And I just kind of go that extra mile. I use a lot of reference. I've seen just about every animal. I actually worked at a zoo for 1 year, so that way I could up my game more and see what these animals that you don't normally get to work on look like up close, and see their mannerisms, and that helped out tremendously.
Wow. So you've become a whole student. I mean, and beyond just learning how to do taxidermy, you've become a true student of the craft. You've
got to really be an artisan with this. It's not something that you just toy with and hope it turns out okay. You've really got to put your heart and soul into it. Every animal that goes out my door, I almost kind of regret that they leave, because I put so much into them that it's kind of sad to see them go away. But just this past weekend, I was at a friend's house. He's got 16 of my mounts in his trophy room. And it was kind of neat walking in there and saying, hey, yeah, I remember that piece. Oh, man, I wish I wouldn't have, given you that piece, because I wanted that one in my house. And, yeah, it's kind of fun.
Why do you, as a species, why do you think humans need to keep these mementos when it comes down to it? Like, what's your view on that?
Not only is it 3D art, you're looking at that memory. It takes you right back to that moment in time. When I suggest for something to be mounted, I tell people, what did you see when that animal stepped out? Was he looking to his right when you saw him? Did he have his head up in the air? Was he doing a flame in? How were his ears? I try to recreate every single part of that hunt that person remembers before he pulled the trigger or loosed the arrow. And for me to do that and, have a customer come in and say, you know what? I'm looking at this animal and I've got goosebumps. That is the ultimate compliment for me is to be able to bring that much of the hunt back to that person. And I can only hope that, every time that they look at that animal, that brings that back for them. It's more than a picture. It's everything. You get to touch the animal. You're seeing the animal. You've got so much there that brings it all back.
Okay. So there are a bunch of amateur craftsmen out there, and most likely not even coming close to the quality of the crafts that you're doing. What would you say to that amateur to help them develop some of their skills at home if they're doing it from a DIY kind of situation?
The biggest turning point for me was going to my first ever taxidermy competition. I went to one up in Redding, California, and the California Taxidermists Association puts it on every year. And so I went to my first one in 2002. And my work was not what it is now. And after seeing everything there, it really lit a fire under me and said, you know what, I've got to do better. Because I came home with 3 third-place ribbons in the commercial division. And commercial is basically a division for people that are either just starting out or their work just isn't quite master quality yet. And it really opened my eyes. I didn't realize that my work was where it was at that time, and it really helped me. And there's so many people that are willing to help at those shows to get your work up to par and help you with any questions, and reference is huge. Spending a lot of time at a zoo with binoculars, really watching the animals, watching what they do and their mannerisms and what their foot does when they step down on a rock and how it moves. That all ties into how that's going to affect your taxidermy work. And so I would say go to a show and definitely look at reference. You can never have enough pictures or video reference of animals just moving. Gotcha.
All right. So you're creating life through a still version of this animal. So in other words, you want to take something that it would do naturally and you want to recreate it as best you can in that pose.
Exactly. You've got to give that animal the most respect and justice that it deserves. And so, when I see some of these mounts that are done that aren't very nice, like, putting wolf jaws into a deer, I'm sorry, the whole novelty thing is just the most disrespectful thing you can possibly do to an animal. So for me to see that, it's like, oh, you have no respect for that animal at all. And, whereas I'm trying my best to give that animal the respect it deserves and make it look as lifelike as I can.
Right. One of the things that you go through as a hunter when you have a game that you want to preserve, if you have a nice trophy, for example, we have to pick a taxidermist. And taxidermists that I know, they're not particularly great business people, so they're really hard to get a hold of. But if you had to break it down, and this is just my personal experience, I'm sure that doesn't speak of all taxidermists by any means, but if you are me, what would you say to me to pick a good taxidermist in my area? What types of questions should I be asking?
First off, you want to see their work. You can go on their website, check out their website. Now, I've seen where some taxidermists are not very honest, and I've had this actually happen to myself where they steal pictures from your website and then put it on their website. So you got to be kind of cautious on that. But go to their studio and ask to see their work. Ask for references. That's huge. If they don't have any references or anyone that would speak well of their work, you probably want to avoid those ones. If they have ribbons or have won anything at any of the taxidermy competitions, that says a lot because it does take a lot of work to win at those shows. So if they've got a lot of ribbons from shows, that's a big bonus. You want to lean towards those, especially if they have a world championship. The work is going to be more expensive when you're dealing with taxidermists that carry world championships and big ribbons, that have won national champion and whatnot. So expect to pay more, but you're going to get what you pay for. If you go to the guy that's doing this out of his garage which there's nothing wrong with anyone working out of the garage, by the way. But
Right.
But if they're, if they haven't won the awards, if they really haven't tried to better their work, and they're only charging a couple $100, which wouldn't even cover the cost for their supplies or their time, I'd probably recommend going elsewhere.
Okay. All right. Very good advice. Dusty,
you really need to, you just basically look at the animal. Are the noses plugged? Do the eyes look symmetrical? That's the first thing people look at on an animal is the eyes. So if the eyes are off, you might as well say the rest of it's going to be off too. So really, really look at the faces.
Okay, so the eyes kind of tell the tale of the rest of the mount. So if
pretty much, yeah.
If they get the eyes wrong, the chance of them getting the rest of the stuff right is pretty bad.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, that's very good information. Now, Dusty, seeing we're on the topic of taxidermy, you've got 3 really nice Ohio bucks hanging in your living room. How did you go about picking your taxidermist?
I seen work that this particular gentleman did prior to having doing some of mine, and I really like the attention to detail, and there's particular eyes that some people buy the kind of cheaper version of a set of eyes, and these eyes look realistic, and he paid a lot of attention to detail, and to me that speaks for itself. I went over and did a walkthrough of his shop and just checked out some of his other work. And, is he doing fish, or is he doing different animals, or, has he got a lot of stuff in his freezers? If somebody's, they can tell you they can get it done in like 3 weeks. That to me tells me that their system's not very good. And, I don't know, that's just personal preference to me. If they say it's going to take 6 months or even sometimes a year, to me, that seems like good taxidermy. I don't know if that speaks for itself or not. Is there any truth behind that?
Absolutely. I'm actually anywhere from 18 months to 2 years behind. So that's very true.
Right. Yeah. And once I found somebody that I really like the work and how they present their work, and, just little simple things that I really picked up on detail. Is their ears, shaped right? Or they actually spend the money on the proper forms, and, or they add the clay or the fiberglass into the veining or the neck roll that you want. There's all different things that are really simple, but they really should be paid attention to. And, you walk into a taxidermy shop and they've got like huge racks on little necked formed bucks that just don't look right. So, there's this, you kill a big, nice buck. You want to see that big, nice form for the neck. And, what's the average deer? Somewhere between 15 and 18 inches. So if you kill a really big, nice, mature whitetail, for instance, a Canadian whitetail, you're probably talking like a 22, 26 inch form.
Yeah, most of the ones I get in here are anywhere from 23 to 26 inches. 24 is about average.
Right, but taxidermists that don't know what they're doing, they would throw an 18 inch form on something like that, and it's just like, what are you doing? I've seen it numerous times where they didn't want to spend that extra money for that larger form to fit the skin a little better. And it really, in the end, that's little things like that can either make or break your taxidermy work. And it's so simple. That's just some of the things that I pay attention to. And, maybe I'm a little more anal than somebody else, but I like good taxidermy work. And, it definitely speaks for itself when you walk into somebody's house and they got some really nice taxidermy work on their critters that they've harvested.
Gotcha.
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing worse than seeing some bad taxidermy and, how much did you spend on that? And then, wow, I wish you wouldn't have spent any money on it, because that's a horrible rendition of whatever it was supposed to be. Right. But yeah, I've seen some pretty rough stuff.
Like my whole thing is I'm kind of an a-hole when it comes to this. Okay. I'll tell somebody that they got bad taxidermy. I'm like, are you serious? That's just me because I'm truthful and I'm pretty straightforward. I tell it the way I see it. If I walk into your house and I'm like, seriously, what is this? It's a great buck, man, but really your taxidermist like shanked you on this one, and sometimes that needs to be told. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, that's a 170 inch rack. There's no way it had like a 16 inch neck on it. Look at this thing. Something's wrong, Either they messed your cape up or they neglected to measure after they took it off or whatever, It's all simple things. But, if you start digging into who the taxidermist was, the stories have already come out from other people, and you're like, man, I wish you'd just ask me, and it happens all the time. I get people call and say, hey, come over and check my buck count. I got it back. And I go, I'm like, man, seriously? There's just no way I'd have paid this guy for this because you something bad went wrong, It's sad to say that, but it's the truth.
I see it a lot. I've had to remount deer that were freshly mounted, and the customer was like, I can't hang this up. It looks like Cookie Monster.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Is this something that you can do? So if you can save these things, can you like a fine piece of art that, where you're restoring a fine piece of artwork, can you restore bad taxidermy?
Not really. There's rare instances where there are some things I can do to make it look slightly better, but your best bet's to just do a complete remount. I usually have a stock of about 15 spare capes, and so I'll go through and I'll look at the deer that they brought in and try to match it up as close as I can with markings, with neck size, with cape color, all of that, and try to match it up as best I can, and then just do a total remount. That's usually the best option. It's an expensive lesson, very expensive lesson.
Right. Go ahead.
I'm going to say one more thing, and maybe I'm sticking my foot in my mouth, but I always ask, do you tan your own hides? And for me, that is valuable. That's priceless to me. If somebody tans their own hides, they seem to have a more realistic outcome. Is there any truth behind that?
Not really. Because I'm such a busy taxidermist, and I'm my only employee. I don't employ anyone else because I don't trust anyone else putting out the quality or doing what I like. So I am my only employee, which means I don't have time to tan all this stuff that comes in, because I'll get in anywhere from 70 to 80 deer a season. So for me to tan all that would be almost impossible because I wouldn't have time to do other things. So I use a very high-end tannery, and it is very expensive for a deer cape. And now prices are a little bit higher up here than they are down south of the border, but for a deer cape to be tanned up here, you're looking at about $150, whereas in the States it's about $45.
Gotcha.
What's the price differential? Why is it more expensive?
It's some of the chemicals are a little bit more difficult to get through the border to get it up here, so it's a little bit more of a hassle trying to get chemicals.
Okay, gotcha.
And of course, you've got to deal with all the export and import and all that stuff is just nasty trying to get stuff through the border.
So it sounds like you have a pretty good following, and that people send you stuff from all over. Where are your deer heads coming from?
Most of them are local, but I have clients from everywhere. I've got clients I just got one in New Zealand. Got another one that's over in Australia. They're all over the place. But they'll come here and they'll hunt a big deer, and then they'll do a search for taxidermists. Most of it's word of mouth, so it's pretty nice that I've got so many loyal clients that say, "Hey, take it to Jeanette." So that makes me pretty happy.
All right. Well, it sounds like you know what you're doing for sure. You're winning championships, and that's pretty darn impressive. And I don't know a darn thing about taxidermy for the most part. So you just opened up a whole new world for me, and thank you for doing that.
You bet.
Let's move on to your television show. Let's talk about your TV show. What's the premise?
Basically, we're a show that's family oriented. And it's a group of friends that we just like to go out and enjoy hunting. We film our hunts. And yeah, we do some tips. We do gear checks. And I love doing the go out and do public appearances. I just did an appearance here a couple months ago at Cabela's, and that was a lot of fun. I got to do an appearance for Ladies' Day, and then I also got to teach at Ladies' Day, that's my favorite thing in the world is teaching. And I kind of joined the show on that premise that I wanted to inspire other women and get girls and young kids, get them all out hunting. Even if you're not going to hunt, get out there and shoot a bow or target shoot, whatever. As long as you're doing something outside, that's the biggest thing. And so that's why I joined the show in the first place. It's not so much to showcase, any of my skills, but honestly, I just wanted to inspire. And I've been really lucky. I've had a few people that come out, they hunt with me, or they'll ask me, different opinions on what kind of a gun should I buy or how should I do this. And it's really humbling that people would like my input.
Very cool. And what's the name of the show again?
No Limits TV.
And is it aired just in Canada, or is it found in the States too?
We were aired in the States for a bit, and I couldn't even tell you what channel we were aired on. It's like it was the Outdoor Channel, I think.
Okay, all right. That's cool.
I'm not familiar with them anymore.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at that. That's big time. All right, so you go from Memphis, Tennessee to television. You're this world-class taxidermist, and you're living in the middle of nowhere, which is awesome, by the way. I love that. And you're also hunting a lot too, though. But let's talk just a little bit about your pro staffing. You mentioned that you're a pro staffer. Tell us a little bit more about that product, and a product that if you have a piece of material that you can't beat up, that's something to talk about some more. So let's learn a little bit more about that product.
Yeah, I tried to kill it. Even managed to roll my quad this spring, which was pretty horrific. And believe it or not, the fabric didn't rip, it didn't scuff, nothing. It's really amazing stuff coming out of Spain, and it's called Anca gear and OSA. Really, really incredible stuff. It's wind resistant. It's water resistant. They also have a line that's waterproof. So if you're out fishing, you can be out on your boat. You can have waves hitting you, and the water just rolls right off. It just beads. I love doing my hat trick. And basically my hat trick is I'll take my hat off and I'll put it under running water, and everybody just, oh, look at that. It just runs right off. And I'm like, yeah, all the gear is like that.
Interesting. What's the name of it again?
Anca gear.
Anca gear. Now, one of the things that I'm always concerned with, if the water's rolling off of it on the front, that there's a barrier between the outside and the inside, to the point where sometimes those barriers keep the moisture in so much that it's not breathable, and you get sweating pretty quick if you even start moving a little bit. What's the situation with this gear?
I was concerned with that as well, because I first got the gear for spring bear season, and I thought, okay, well, I'm dealing with all sorts of temperatures. Sometimes I'll be out there and it's snowing. Sometimes I'll be out there and it's going to be plus 15. So, you're dealing with big temperatures. And, it was amazing. I thought, well, for sure I'm going to be sweated up in this stuff or whatnot. And no, not at all. It's actually incredibly breathable.
That's cool. All right. So we'll put all that stuff in the show notes so people can get an idea of what that's all about. Let's talk a little about the rest of your gear. And this is where I like to bring Dusty in, kind of run down the drill about what else you carry in the woods with you. Dusty, you want to take it from here?
Absolutely. We'll get into, do you carry a backpack in the woods with you?
Absolutely. I don't leave home without my backpack. I'm rather accident prone, so I carry a first aid kit. I don't know why, but it seems like I'm either going to cut myself or fall down, or I don't know. But I found out this year that a first aid kit is an absolute must to keep in my kit. And also flagging tape. I find if you get on a blood trail and you start to lose it, if you carry that flagging tape with you and you just start marking probably about every 50 to 60 yards, that's really going to be a great marker to kind of show you. You can look back and say, you know what? I don't think that deer went this way. I think he went this other way. And sure enough, you'll get back on blood. But I always carry a flashlight. And another thing I carry is my Havalon. That thing is absolutely irreplaceable. I've had the same Havalon knife for 10 years, and I've run over it with my truck. I've thrown it in the washing machine I don't know how many times, and the dryer. It's absolutely incredible knife. I love that I can take the blade off, put another blade on, and I actually get all of my blades through a veterinary supply service, and they're quite cheap there. I can get a box of 100 for about $30. So
wow.
I always carry that with me.
Good deal. So that's pretty much what's in your backpack.
Yep, that's what I carry. I also carry a product called Nose Jammer. And this was my first year using it. I wasn't real sure. I'm not big on gimmicky type stuff. And a friend of mine said he really liked it. So I said, well, I'll give it a try. And so I shook it up and I sprayed some on my clothing. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, I don't want to use this in bear camps because it smells delicious. And so I was kind of concerned that maybe the bears might want to climb up the tree and get to me because I smell like vanilla. But this stuff is actually awesome stuff. I used it this entire deer season. And I had deer popping out in my wind about 50 yards away, and they never even knew I was there. So right there, I went out and bought a case of the stuff. It's just awesome.
That's Nose Jammer?
Yep, that's that Nose Jammer.
Yeah.
I saw commercials for it on TV, and I thought, well, it's just another gimmick. But a friend of mine turned me on to it and said, no, this stuff is actually really good, and they weren't kidding.
Somebody said that smells like vanilla. Is that correct?
It does, and that's why I was so concerned going into the woods with that on during bear season, because
Right.
I don't want to get eaten because I smell nice.
Right. I couldn't agree more to that. Yeah, that's just a product that's really starting to show up around here more and more. And that's just, is it just a squirt bottle or is it aerosol? How's it come?
It's a little aerosol can. My only concern about it is, when we've got temperatures that are minus 45, I kind of worry about that aerosol can freezing up on me. But so far, we've had an unreal warm fall, so I didn't have to worry about it this year.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that. That thing busts right in your backpack.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Right, for sure. Is there any particular other cover sprays or anything like that you would use up there in Canada?
I do like the silver. I use quite a bit of the Primo silver, and I found that's pretty good stuff. I also like that, what is it, the Scent Killer Gold. My friend Melissa Bachman, she uses that in her commercials, and I really do like that. It has no scent. I wash my clothes in it. I also shower with it and use their shampoo, and that's really good stuff.
Gotcha. And what else? You say you do shower in the non-scented shower gel, or tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I wish they would come out with something for women's hair that doesn't make my hair so crunchy, but I guess with time that will come.
It's true. A lot of those soaps do kind of get your hair all kind of bunched up.
Yeah, you go out into the bush and you're just like, wow, it feels like I've got sticks on my head. But hopefully somebody, maybe they'll hear this and say, you know what, we'll come out with some scentless Pantene.
There you go. Right.
You know, I just throwing it out there. I don't know if Doe Girl has anything like that or not. Jay, you remember?
I'd have to go and look that up again. I'm not sure.
Right. We have a good friend of ours, Tina Kane. She has the product Doe Girl. It's pretty much a full line of scent-free. And what else is it, Jay? It's
cosmetics, lipsticks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all scent-free stuff. So you can look great while you're hunting.
There you go. Perfect. Well, normally in the mornings I'm in such a rush to get out, I don't have time to put makeup on, but there is the odd time that if I'm being filmed, I will put on a little bit of war paint, but it's normally the black and green kind.
Right, there you go.
Right, yeah, for sure. But Doe Girl come out with a line that I can't. It's scent free and something else. Scent free and man, this is slipping my mind right now. Hard to remember.
Wow, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, DAUX Girl, Doe Girl.
Okay.
So what else? Let's get into a little bit about how you hunt in Canada. Are you guys tree stands, ground blinds? Tell us a little bit about how you set up to hunt in Canada for whitetail.
We do a little bit of both. I really prefer the ground blind. Ground blinds are very forgiving. I take a lot of first-time hunters out, and I find that, they can be a bit fidgety. They move around a lot, shuffle their feet. And also when they go for their weapon, once an animal does start to come in, you've got that forgiveness of having something all the way around you to kind of cover up any of your movement. And I also like that it also covers up more scent. And for me, I do feel safer on the ground, especially, and I know this sounds crazy, but I love hunting black bears from the ground. It's a little bit more of an adrenaline rush than sitting up in a tree, which, don't get me wrong, it's an adrenaline rush up in a tree too, because sometimes they will come up the tree with you. But for me, the ground blind, that's my favorite way to go. Yeah,
it sounds intense. That'd be definitely a cool experience. Black bear in a ground blind. Any particular ground blind that you're using?
I've got the Primos. Also, Cabela's has started coming out with a really nice contender. They've got a big ground blind. We've got the biggest one that they make, and I really like size, and that's mainly because I take people out, and you want to have that freedom of movement to say, okay, we need to switch spots, or, if I'm filming, I need to be able to have my cameraman move around a bit more. So I like the big ground blinds. The only problem with that is you've got to find ample area to put them into, and sometimes you just don't have that.
Right, yeah, it makes sense.
Right. Oh, definitely. Interesting. So ground blinds and tree stands are your two preferred methods.
Yeah, the only thing with the ground blind is when I'm hunting black bears, I never leave my ground blind out. I learned that lesson a few years ago. The bears really like the ground blind and seem to use it as a trampoline. So that puts a kibosh on ever leaving a ground blind out with them.
All right. Very nice. I did not know that. Fascinating.
I'm going to get into something here, being it's Canada and cold climate.
Yes.
Let's get into a little bit about your clothing articles that perform in the cold weather.
I layer up like crazy. Anka has a base layer that I've been using that's just fabulous. almost type of fleecy material on inside, but it's got wicking properties. So if you do start to overheat, which I deal with those stupid hot flashes you guys don't have to worry about, I'm constantly hot. Then I'm cold. Then I'm hot again. So this stuff is fabulous.
How do you know we don't have to deal with that?
Yeah, how do you know that?
Well, you might have to deal with it with your wives.
I don't know. Jay's pretty moody.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's me, Mr. Moody. Right.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, you've got to have your base layers. If you don't have base layers, you're going to either overheat walking in, and then you're going to find that now that you're overheated, you're going to start sitting there, and as you start to cool down, all that sweat's going to start freezing up on you, and then you're going to just be completely miserable out there, and your hunts, you're not going to want to sit there. So you need to have a base layer that's going to be wicking away that moisture, because once you're out and you're walking, you heat up so quickly. I find that every time I go to my ground blind, I get sweated up like crazy. But I'm also carrying a lot of gear. I've got a very heavy rifle. I always carry shooting sticks with me just in case I see something while I'm walking out there. I like to have a steady rest at all times. And then I've got my big backpack on top of that, and then all my layers and my jackets. So I'm layered up pretty well. So once I get into that ground blind, I like to take some of those layers off. I take off that outer layer jacket first, and I kind of cool down. It might be minus 30 outside, but if you don't allow yourself to cool down a little bit, then you're going to run into some major problems.
Yeah, it makes sense. Is there any particular brand name that you prefer when the weather gets really cold?
I love the Anka gear because they've got all these different base layers to choose from. Now, I do like the Thermacell heated insoles. I just got a pair this year, and I love them. I won't ever go out without them again. I don't know if it's a girl thing, but the first thing to go are my hands, my feet, and my tush. And once my feet go, I'm done. I can't stay out there if it feels like my toes are rattling around in my boots. So I make sure that I always have my heated insoles with me and make sure that they're well charged the night before.
Gotcha. Okay.
So those are battery operated, by the way?
Mine aren't battery operated. Mine are actually you plug them in and you charge them overnight, and the charge is actually good for a couple of days.
Okay.
That's interesting. What's them called?
They're Thermacell heated insoles.
Okay.
But yeah, you wouldn't make it out here in minus 45 without them. They're really wonderful. I love my merino wool socks. I actually get my socks from Bass Pro Shops. I get the redhead socks. They're the really thick ones. Mm-hmm. And I think they're about $20 a pair, but they are absolutely worth it.
It's funny you say that. I bought a pair of socks down there. I'm a big socks guy, but I found a good pair of socks at Bass Pro myself. So I'm with you.
Yeah, those they're gray colored socks, and I think I must own maybe 15 pairs of them. I just love them. If anytime I go down to Bass Pro Shops in Calgary, that's the first thing I buy is a couple extra pairs of socks.
Awesome.
Very cool. Let's get into a little bit about your archery equipment for Canada. What kind of bow are you shooting?
I've been shooting a Pearson for the past 5 years. I'm actually getting ready to start looking for a new bow. I'm kind of torn between the Bowtech. I really like that Eva Shockey bow that just came out. Obsession Bows just came out with an awesome women's bow, and that one's really got my interest. I'm also looking at an Elite, and I'm also looking at a Prime. So with those 4 bows, one of them's going to win my heart.
Gotcha.
But my Pearson, I've had that one since 2010. It's getting a little old. It's a little slow. I should probably have the strings replaced, but I'm really sentimental on that bow. I took that bow to Africa with me in 2011, and I managed to get some really nice animals with it. And when you've got something that has been that loyal, and you've taken so many great animals. I took my best whitetail to date in 2013 with it, and I almost feel like I'm cheating on my bow by getting a new bow. And I know that sounds really stupid, but I get attached to my hunting equipment, and it kind of makes me sad, when they wear out and die.
So you think your bow will file for divorce or what?
No, I don't think it's ever going to ask for half of anything, but it might ask for new strings.
Gotcha. Well, I guess that makes sense. Are you shooting carbon fiber arrows, aluminum? Tell us about your arrow setup.
I'm shooting the Carbon Express Mayhem, and I found those are really hard-hitting arrows. I like to use the Montec G5s and the 100 grains in conjunction with those arrows, and I find that is just a nasty combination. I hit a really gorgeous cinnamon bear last spring with one. And, that just blew right through that bear, and really impressed with the penetration. Like I said, it's sometimes getting pass-throughs on low poundage. I've got kind of short arms. I've only got a 25-inch draw. I'm kind of short myself, but and I'm only shooting 45 pounds. I've got a bad shoulder, and now that I had this quad rollover, I've got a really bad shoulder. I ended up having to get a crossbow permit for the rest of this season because I couldn't draw my bow back due to this injury. So that's kind of why I'm also going towards a new bow this coming spring too, is because now it's like, okay, well, I think now is the time to get something new. I've got to change here with my shoulders, so let's try for a little bit more forgiving bow.
Right, yeah, it makes sense. So, you got to adjust to what your body's got going on.
Exactly. Just the pitfalls of getting older, hey?
Yeah, right. I don't know anything about that getting old marker yet, but, I'll get there eventually.
I do. I understand.
Yeah, Jay sure does, but... Just kidding, Jay, really.
Yeah, right.
I'm assuming
I don't think he is.
I'm assuming that's a fixed broadhead that you're shooting, not a mechanical, correct?
I'm not a fan of the mechanicals at all. I shot one and it didn't open up, and after that I said, I am done with this. I'm never going to shoot mechanicals again. You've just got too much room for error there. Either the band isn't going to open up. You've got just so much stuff that can go wrong, and archery in itself is difficult anyways. You've got to have so many things that line up perfectly for this to work. Your shot has to be perfect. Everything has got to go right. So why depend on something that might fail?
Right, yeah, for sure. I think that the more and more we get into these mechanical broadheads, the more and more I see people switching back to a 3-blade fixed.
Yeah, all it took was one failure for me, and I said, that's it. And I mean, granted, yes, it was just a doe, but any animal that you wound, that's such a horrible feeling. You don't want any animal to suffer. You just don't want that. And so if I can allot for any room for error to be erased, that's the route I'm going to go.
Yeah, for sure. That makes complete sense. And try to be ethical and lethal. That's something that we're seeing more and more. I think, Jay, you're probably seeing the same results on the mechanical broadheads, but not pushing somebody away from shooting them, but just be careful with them and hope for the best.
Exactly.
Jay, we're going to take Jeanette on a hunt.
Yeah, let's go hunting. Let's we'd like to kind of sit on your shoulders and walk through a hunt with you, and as though we went with you ourselves. And one of the couple times we've talked about this 2013 buck that you've I think you shot it in Alberta, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's correct. That's still my best buck to date.
Okay, that's the story we want to hear. So
okay,
I'd like to go kind of play by play, maybe lead up to the hunt, maybe start 48 hours or wherever you think is the appropriate starting point, and take us on a little journey and tell us kind of what happened along the way.
Sure. I'm actually going to start 2 weeks before I got him.
Okay.
We had just moved onto a new property, and it came with 160 acres onto that property. And so I was pretty excited to get cameras out. So I set out all these different cameras. There were trails everywhere. So I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be something good here. And I actually set up a camera only 100 yards from the back door. And I'm like, there's probably not going to be anything on this camera, but I'm going to set it here anyways because there is a trail. So we'll just see. I checked it the next morning, and I woke my fiance up because I was screaming in the kitchen, oh my gosh, it's got a drop time. And so I got on the phone with everybody, and I said, okay, what do you guys think? I'm going to send you a picture of this buck. What do you guys think? And my goal that year was to top 150. I had never shot a deer over 150. I it was just over 149. So I had to break that 150 mark. That was my goal. And so I called all my friends. What do you think? Do you think he'll go over 150? And some of my friends were like, yeah, he might. And some of my friends were like, I don't know. You'll have to see him. I need better pictures of him. Some people were saying he was a young deer. Some people were saying he was an old deer. And judging by the pictures, I was kind of leaning towards he was an aged deer. He had the very full brisket, a little bit of a swayed back on him. His hips were lower than his withers. He just looked like definitely a mature buck. So I started collecting pictures and patterning him. And he was coming through sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evenings, but he was going through just about daily. So I set out a ground blind. I had just a little tiny area to stick it in, but I managed to kind of squeak in a little blind, and it was 26 yards away from that trail that he was using. So I started sitting every morning and every evening, and he just wasn't showing up. My trail camera was now showing, he'd come in late at night, or he'd come cruising by at like 5 in the morning. So I'm thinking, oh, man, I don't think I'm going to get this buck. I've only had one daylight picture of him, and that was the first picture I ever saw of him. So I was starting to get a little bit discouraged. A lot of does traveling through, and this is early season I'm hunting. I'm hunting at the beginning of September.
Okay.
So I had a few friends sit with me, and nobody was seeing anything. We were trying to get this on film. And the one night we sat, my fiance and I, and it was starting to get a little bit chilly. It was the 17th of September, and I didn't have a whole lot of layers on. I just had on a light jacket, and I was actually getting really bored and really tired of sitting looking at the same trees and the same clumps of grass, and nothing was happening. So I looked at Travis and I said, "You want to get out of here?" And his eyes were just bulging out of his head, and he looked at me like I had 3 heads, and I'm like, oh, something's coming. And at this point, I had already taken my release off, and I had just started to unnock my arrow. So I went ahead and hurried up, and I knocked it again and put my release on. And with his expression, I knew it must have been close. So I went ahead and I drew back.
Yeah.
And not even 1 second after I had drawn back, my buck steps out. And the shocking thing was he was not on the 26-yard trail. He was on the 11-yard trail that I used to go in. So he took up the entire window of my blind. And I didn't have time to get excited because it happened so unbelievably fast. It was just almost shooting on instinct. I really, just kind of looked for that vital area, put my pen on it, and let her rip. And I heard this amazing smack. And off he goes. Now, where I was hunting is in a slough bottom, and I've got a big beaver dam back there, and most of that grass is over my head. So you're looking at grass that is well over 6 foot tall in some places. So I'm pretty pumped. I heard a crash. I was like, oh my gosh, he's down. This is amazing. I can't believe this actually happened. And so I go over to the spot where he was, and there's no blood. Okay, well, that's kind of scary. Well, where's my arrow? So I walk past, there's no arrow. And I walk back to the blind, and that's when I see it. I had nicked the bottom window of my blind, and immediately my heart sank. I thought, oh no, what happened here? Did I hit the blind and it deflected the arrow? Why is there no blood? Did I injure this deer? Have I hit him in a non-vital area? And suddenly all this doubt comes into my mind, and I start freaking out. Travis, on the other hand, is like, let's just go back to the house, get some flashlights, give it a minute, and then we'll go back out. We'll look for some blood. And so he somehow managed to coerce me to go back out. So I walk away from the blind, we grab the flashlights, come back out, and we're looking for blood. And there's none. We're walking all these spots where I thought he might have run off to, and there's absolutely zero blood. And we walk all around. I said, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if I even hit him now. What was that whack? Maybe the whack was me hitting the blind. So we go back to the house, and I'm just sick. And this was the first time I've had this happen. And I'm just thinking to myself, that's it. I'm giving up bow hunting. I've wounded something now. This is horrible. So he says, let's just go to sleep. We'll go find him first thing in the morning.
Yep.
Well, I didn't sleep at all. There was no sleeping. I had all these pictures going through my head of what happened, all these different scenarios. And before first light, I was up and out the door. And of course, it was frosty that night. So I walk outside and everything is sparkling in little white crystals. And I'm thinking, well, crap, this is going to be bad for looking for blood because everything's covered up. And so Travis is like, you know what? Just come back in the house, wait for the sun to come up, and melt some of that off, and then we'll go out and we'll look. Well, I couldn't do that. So I went out there and I just stood in the field and I kept staring down, waiting for the sun to at least burn off a little bit of this frost. And for some reason, instead of going to the east, which is where I thought the deer had run off to, for some reason I decided to walk north. And I don't know why I did that, but something drew me to that area. And I just happened to look down and I saw something. And it was just a little tiny speck. And I look, and sure enough, there's blood. And I was like, oh my gosh, we didn't even go this way. We went east the entire time. I didn't even think to go north because as soon as I shot, I looked over at Travis. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just so excited. I should have been watching the deer.
Right.
And So yeah, sure enough, he had headed north, and I'm looking and looking. Oh, there's more blood. Oh my gosh, there's my broke off arrow. And it looked like I had probably about 10 inches of penetration before it had broken off. And that's what using those Mayhems in combination with those Montec G5s. So I was like, okay, now we've got something. Then I find the hole that he had fallen into, and that is what opened him up. And from there, that blood trail was super easy to track. So Travis at this point leapfrogs in front of me, and he's just following the track. And I was kind of jealous, but that's okay. He wanted to find my deer for me, so I was okay with that. And we come up over a little knoll, and he spun around and he hugs me. And I was like, get out of my way. Where's my deer? And so I pushed him out of the way, and there he was laying. And my biggest fear that whole night was that the coyotes had gotten him. Out here in Alberta, we have a huge problem with coyotes, wolves, cougars, all of these predators. And if you leave a deer overnight, it's almost 99% that it's going to get eaten by a coyote.
Gotcha.
And for him to be untouched, and it was just amazing. And it had been cool all night, so I knew that the meat was still good. It just couldn't have turned out any better. And he had only gone 70 yards from where I had hit him. And I didn't expect him to go that direction. And it was a good lesson for me to not only watch the animal as it runs off, but to also, back out and wait until you either have really good flashlights, which we didn't have that night, or just to be patient and wait until the next day.
Yeah.
And, but that was amazing. It's something I'll never forget. I'm actually doing a half life size mount on that buck. His feet were unbelievable. He was so ancient. He had worn off half of one side of his hoof, so he technically should have come in wearing a walker.
Wow.
And his teeth, he had 2 teeth left in his front, and then the rest of his molars were worn down past his gum line, and he was missing molars as well.
Wow.
And we aged him at 9.5 years old.
Holy smokes. What a great story.
To have a 9.5-year-old deer that went 151 and change, can you imagine what he would have been in his prime?
Right, yeah.
And the neat thing is, about 2 months later, during rifle season, a customer comes in and he brings in this beautiful deer. And it was uncanny how similar it looked to my buck. And I said, it's got the same drop tine. It's got the same stickers. It's got everything that my buck has, the same inline points. And I put it next to my buck. And I said, oh, my gosh, you have shot the offspring to my buck. Where did you shoot this buck? And he ended up shooting that buck 2 kilometers from where I got mine.
No kidding.
So that was pretty interesting to see the same genetics.
Wow.
And it was, unfortunately, it was only a 3-year-old buck that he had shot. But same drop time, same everything, same math. I was like, oh, could you imagine that deer is a 5.5 or 6.5-year-old?
Wow. Crazy. What a great story.
But yeah,
that's a good story.
I went from super high to super low to super high again.
Right. That's awesome. Congratulations. That's a great story. It's a great buck.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Jeanette, how old are you now?
I'm 40.
You're 40. All right.
I'm 40.
You're still younger than I am, but older than Dusty, so that's cool.
I don't act my age. I absolutely refuse to act my age.
Right.
I feel you.
I don't even know what that means.
I love that. I can't stand to do it myself, really.
So, Jeanette, knowing what you know today about life and hunting and taxidermy, what would the Jeanette Hall of today tell the 20-year-old Jeanette Hall back then? You
need to live a little bit more than what you're doing. Yes, I was living a lot back then, but live more. Go out and do more. I found that TV sure sucks you in, and I watched a lot of TV and ate a lot of fast food, and I would say, don't do that. That's killing you. So I would have told myself, get your butt outdoors. And I really wish I would have gotten into hunting or stayed with it at that young age. I wish I would have known more people that were into hunting and known other girls that were into it, or even had guy friends or whatever. That would have really helped. And I think that's kind of what has pushed me to do the mentorship program with AHIA. And getting people outdoors and taking people that have never hunted before, take them hunting. And to me, it's so important to get people out and to experience all these things. I mean, I've seen such things that you'd never see sitting on your couch watching a TV about hunting. Like to go out and see sunrises that people are still laying in their beds, sleeping in. They're missing so much, or just just being out there, that's so huge.
Excellent. Love that. So we all have these things that we bring into the woods with us that's almost like a good luck charm or a memento or a pacifier or something like that. And if we leave it in the car or the truck or at home, we feel kind of naked without it when we're in the woods and don't quite feel like we're going to be as successful when we're there. What's that one thing for you?
Ooh, one thing. Boy, that's a tough one. I'd have to say it's my rangefinder. Once I lost my peripheral vision, I found that I couldn't figure out ranges as well anymore. And so I've come to really depend heavily on a rangefinder. And also, with archery, you've got to be so exact. You can't just say, well, I think he's at 35 yards, so I'll just put my 30-yard pin on and that should do it. You've got to be so exact with archery, knowing your ranges. And even with rifle hunting, if I'm going to be taking a 300-yard shot, I want to make sure that's going to drop that animal there and it's going to be a lethal kill. So I don't want to take any chances. So I've always got my rangefinder with me.
Gotcha. Awesome. If you could pick one and only one deer hunting tip of all time, and there are a million, but which one would you say is the number one for you?
I'm going to say patience. A lot of people don't have the patience to sit. I just spent the past 17 days sitting in the same exact field in roughly the same spot. And I did pass up a tremendous amount of bucks. I didn't tag a buck. This is the first time since 2008 that I haven't hung a tag on a buck. But patience is key. That if you don't have patience, you won't be rewarded, I think. And it's almost a karma thing. You've got to put in your time and spend your time in the woods and really just patience is a virtue.
Okay. I like that. I do agree with that one. So
yeah, you're not going to get a big buck without patience. Sitting
right.
for 2 weeks straight in a ground blind day and night, that patience paid off for me in a big way.
Yeah, it can be grinding. It can be mentally challenging. You could just
It can absolutely break you. And I think the one that would really break you the most would be sheep hunting, because there not only do you have the physical factor of something breaking you, you've got that mental factor as well. So. And that can go right over into whitetail hunting. So Patience, just sit there and wait it out. Yes, it's miserable sitting on a cut line staring at the same piece of bush, but sometimes it'll all come together for you. And once you put in that time, you'll be rewarded.
Absolutely. So if you had one book or magazine that you reference frequently to help you understand hunting a little bit better, or find out what other people are doing in the world, or something that taught you how to hunt the way you hunt, what's that one book or magazine that you use?
One magazine that I really like is Big Game Illustrated. It's not a bunch of ads and advertisements and, just filler. It's actual stories about people that go out, and I really enjoy reading about, archery hunting. They do archery as well as rifle, but I really enjoy listening or reading about, how did this person get into this field? How did they get out of the ground blind with that many deer around them? What techniques did they use to make that zipper quiet when they're closing it? Or, I really like reading stuff like that.
Those are some tips that I'd like to know the answer to, actually. That'd be pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I found that if you need to get out of your ground blind and you've got a lot of deer in the field, sound like a coyote.
That's a good one.
And then you don't sound like a person. If you sound like a coyote, they'll still run because they think a predator's there, but it's not as horrible as,
a zipper.
Them seeing you. And exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Yeah, the howl of a coyote, but boy, that zipper, that really
that
the crap
zipper,
out of me.
that is Velcro. Velcro does not belong on hunting gear. Do not put Velcro on hunting stuff.
Yeah. I agree with that one.
You still see it.
Yep. So, Jeanette, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed this last hour. It just flew by. And I think you have some other hunting stories that you could probably tell us, and we'd just sit here and listen the whole time and not even talk. So I can't thank you enough for joining us on the podcast and kind of spilling your guts and letting us know what it's like to hunt Alberta. We've heard lots of great things about it, just haven't ever done it ourselves. So we have to live vicariously through you.
Well, we have a lot of game up here. I mean, I can look out from my window and, the chance to see an elk or moose or wolves, you name it. It's all here. So come to Alberta, come hunt. We'd love to have you guys.
I would do that. Yeah, that's it's on my hit list, actually, of things to do before I check out. So awesome. Thanks for joining us on the Big Buck Podcast.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to Jeanette Hall for joining us on the Big Buck Registries Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. Always a pleasure. And to go to Canada and Alberta, where we don't usually go, where the big bucks roam, and especially when it's cold, man, that's some different territory up there, stuff we're not used to down here. So just love learning about Jeanette and the taxidermy and her challenges in life and overcoming a brain tumor and still getting it done in the woods and living every day to hunt in the whitetail woods and experiencing some world-class taxidermy. Just fantastic individual.
Yeah, it just goes to show you. If another thing is that if you get started in something in school and it's somebody else sees the light and sees what you're best at and what your vision is, and they kind of get you off tangent, and sometimes it works out.
It's amazing. I mean, she went from Memphis to California to I think it was North Dakota, then ended up in Alberta. So, man, what a great story.
Amazing journey.
Amazing journey. Dusty, do you have a Chubby Tines tip of the week for us this week?
I do have a Chubby Tines tip of the week.
What do you have, my friend?
Man, when you're watching a buck run across the field and you look at him through a scope and, man, you think that's a dandy 8-point. And you don't scope him back up. You just watch him run across the field till he gets in shooting distance and you shoot him. Make sure he's got the other side of his rack before you pull the trigger.
Are you speaking from experience?
I am, I'll be the first to admit it. I did shoot a Ohio 8-point last day of deer gun here last week, and it's a half rack, And the amazing part is it's got a rack, real nice heavy 8-point. Thought, man, it's going to be a beautiful deer and on the dead run across the field. And sure enough, I squeezed the trigger off and smoked him. And what I could see in the scope was a main beam on the other side with the brow tine. I thought, man, I'm good. I'm golden. Sure enough, he's got a busted off main beam on the right side. And I'm just proud as I can be of him, though. It's a lot of guys that go a whole long time without not ever shooting a buck. So the meat's going to taste good, and just a little comical Chubby Tines tip of the week.
I like it. All right, and it's a stud of a buck. I don't care who you are, especially for me coming from New Hampshire. That would be a prize. That'd be a trophy for me, even if it was half. But I get it. Sometimes it's hard to judge those things when they're kind of moving fast, and you think it's all there, and it's just not.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool buck. It's got some history, obviously a fighter, and like I said, nice heavy 8-point. And when you see the other main beam going out 8-10 inches, and you see a real nice brow tine on the other side, you just almost it almost taught me a lesson to quit automatically thinking that it's all there. When you see that other main beam. I just scoped him up. Man, I seen a real nice, beautiful, symmetrical 8-point. Probably 11-inch G2s. One side brow tine is at least 9 inches. Nice, big, heavy, wide-bladed brow tine. Oh, it just looked beautiful running across the field. I said, man, that's a beautiful deer. And sure enough, I caught the other main beam and a brow tine, and I think I just took it for granted that it was all there, Jay, really, the heat of the moment type thing.
Right. Yep.
And sure enough, shot him, and beautiful left side. I mean, just phenomenal. But, that this mishap is that the right side's broke off, and it's still going to make a real unique Euro mount. And I'm going to enjoy it for the rest of my life. It's a cool story. I shot him with the 44, the straight wall cartridge that you're allowed to use here in Ohio. And man, it's the first deer I've ever shot with that gun. So it's a great story.
That is a good story. That's a very interesting firearm, by the way. And congratulations on taking your buck this year. That's awesome. We'll be down your neck of the woods very soon, and hopefully we'll have some luck during muzzle loader season as well. Yeah,
we got the ATA coming up, and you'll be down here in Ohio for a few days, sitting in the famous Ohio Chubby Tines tree stand for a few days, and we'll see if we can't make it happen.
Yeah, if you happen to be going to the ATA this year, if you wouldn't mind, do a little Twitter action for us, and tag us at Big Buck Registry on Twitter and hashtag ATA 2016 if you would, so we know you're going to be there, so we can connect at some meetup somewhere down in the complex. Dusty, let's move on, and where can we find you when you're not hanging out here with me on the mic?
Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. You can also go to Facebook.com/Chubby Gobbler. And if you're looking to have a little fun with me, look me up. Facebook.com/Dusty Hunt Neck. Just a little funner side where I can cut up and kind of post some funny things that I pick up here and there. And some of the crazy things I get into, I like to post about, but that's where you can find me. You can also shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not in the New Hampshire woods of no whitetails or on the mic?
Well, I would, if you're listening to the show, and I don't know exactly how you're listening to the show right now, but if you're on an Apple device, if you wouldn't mind, do a search in your search bar and search for Big Buck Registry. And if you love the show, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to this show too. If you can find it in the podcast app, and subscribe to us on iTunes. I just want to let you know that there is a Google Play Store app coming out, and it's going to feature all the podcasts that have been submitted. We have submitted our podcast to Google, and we have been accepted to that program. From what I understand, that will be live sometime in January. So stay tuned if you're on an Android or Google phone. That'll be coming out pretty soon. Otherwise, if you'd like to reach me directly, shoot me an email, j@bigbuckregistry.com. Leave us some feedback, something you like the show, or something you liked about the show, something you'd like us to do, or go speak to some particular guest. We'd like to get that feedback. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/bigbuckregistry, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry at Facebook. And if you'd like to have your big buck featured and be famous in front of 200,000 followers for a day, we can make you famous. All you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all the instructions will be right there for you. And we'll get you loaded up on the site and make you famous for at least one day. Well, Dusty, I think that's a wrap, brother.
Big buck, everywhere, a big buck.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.